otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. The meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance. We will now confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you are on the call. Rob Benson. Not here. Jane.
Present.
Ron.
On paper, present.
Elise. Matthew.
Present.
Michael. No Michael yet. Vic.
Present.
Parker.
Present.
And Gary Trindle is here as well. So we will go ahead and get started, and hopefully Michael, Elise, and Rob will be joining us shortly. Just really quickly from a agenda this evening, knock on wood, I think will be hopefully be reasonably quick. We have some administrative items. The minutes we will save until the end. We'll go ahead and discuss Whisper Way and Emerald Drive, and then we'll move into our public hearings. The MBTA communities discussion should be relatively brief. Don't anticipate a lot of discussion, but we'll certainly allow people if they want to make a comment to do so. We have a continued public hearing on some proposed amendments to our stormwater regulations. Then we have a new public hearing, which will really be introductory in nature for Elmwood Farms 3, which is off of Blueberry. So let's go ahead and move into Whisper Way first. So I can read this just for folks at home, but per town meeting process, the planning board must vote to add the articles it intends on sponsoring at the annual town meeting warrant. So this is a simple majority, and we will be discussing whether we want to recommend open space acceptance article to the annual town meeting warrant. So John, really quickly, any commentary from town hall on this agenda item?
Sure. So through the chair, this is a pretty simple process. This isn't the hearing. This isn't the recommendation for planning board to make at town meeting. This is just to add it to the warrant so that it can be heard at town meeting. There will be a hearing at a later point before town meeting that the planning board would hold to get public input and vote on a recommendation to provide to town meeting whether to approve that article or not. But that is not what we're doing tonight. Tonight is just to add it to the warrant for both of the open space items.
Okay. Any questions? All right, and to John's point, this is, we will have a later hearing on this, so there shouldn't be a need for much discussion or from the public for that matter. And I apologize, I did reach out to the open space chair to see if they wanted to weigh in, but to John's point, this is just to determine if we want to recommend the article for town meeting warrant. So if there's no comments or questions, I will entertain a motion that the planning board submit the article to accept open space donation for Whisper Way open space and landscape preservation development subdivision to be included on the 2024 annual town meeting warrant.
So moved.
Second, Ron Pfeiffer.
And assuming no further discussion.
One discussion, just to be clear, we are gonna discuss this at a future meeting, like whether we endorse it or not, correct?
That's correct.
All right, I'm good. Thank you.
Yep, there's just a timeline to get it on the warrant. So that's all we're voting on tonight.
Yep.
All right, assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Did Elise make it on? Elise, are you there? No? Matthew?
Yes.
Michael, did Michael make it on?
He said that he can't make it today's meeting.
Okay. Vic,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
and Gary is a yes as well. That passes unanimously. And then on the second one for Connolly Farm, otherwise known as Emerald Drive, same process. Any questions or comments before we move to a vote? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion the planning board submit the article to accept the open space donation for Connolly Farm, aka Emerald Drive, open space and landscape preservation development subdivision to be included on the 2024 annual town meeting warrant.
So moved.
Second, Ron Pfeiffer.
Assuming no further discussion. Rob, how do you vote?
Rob's yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Ron Pfeiffer, yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. Passes unanimously. Okay. So let's go ahead and move to our next hearing. And this is on the MBTA communities. John, do we have any update coming out of Zach?
So point of order, the next item on the agenda is the stormwater regulations, but do you want to just skip that? The next page actually has it in the opposite order. It has Oh.
MBTA communities first.
I mixed it up on our memo.
Depends which page you read. Does it matter which one we do first?
It doesn't.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do MBTA communities because number one, I already introduced that. Number two, per our prior discussion, we've just a quick update from a site walk. And John, I guess going back to my question on Zach, any update coming out of Zoning Advisory Committee?
No, we don't have an update from Zach. I'm looking to schedule a meeting for Zach in the coming week or so to get that finalized. Emily and I just kind of discussed a few other issues, made a couple minor changes. I uploaded those up to the shared folder, but no significant or real changes to the proposal at this point.
Okay. The second update is we did have a nice site walk around the preserve on Saturday. Really appreciate it to the residents for taking the time to show us around, and certainly a very nice development. We heard not only a chance to see how it was organized, and I think just in general get an appreciation for where it's located, and even the four different septic systems that they have and whatnot. But again, always helpful to put a visual on that. I think that the next steps for us, we had talked about continuing for two reasons. One was for Zach to come to us with their formal recommendation, and secondly, to allow Emily, I don't recall her title, John, but to the representative from that's been helping advise us through this process, to have her join our meeting as well, so that if we have any final or remaining questions, we can rely on her expertise. Do we know what date that would be yet, or is that up to us to determine? Because I guess what I'm thinking is, I'm certainly happy to take any public comment or comment from the board on this. But I think it probably makes sense to continue the next hearing until we know that we'll be through Zach and that Emily is able to join us. Looking at you, John, does that make sense?
Yeah, so Emily and I talked about how she's going to prepare a report, kind of outlines her review of the whole document, comments, recommendations, that kind of a thing. Though I suspect there's not going to be a ton of recommendations. And we've talked about having that ready for the February 26th meeting, but I have not received it yet. Obviously, still plenty of time. and I didn't even know if we were going to have a February 26th meeting since it didn't look like there might be anything on that agenda. So we're tentatively scheduled. I need to check her schedule, but tentatively scheduled for her to attend the March 5th meeting or the March 4th meeting.
March 4th.
March 4th meeting.
Okay.
So that's when I've planned with her, but if the board wants her to attend the February 26th, I can reach out and see if that works for her. I know she's pretty busy with these MBTA things. So I don't know if that would work, but we have penciled in March 4th.
Well, given that we have 2 meetings a week apart, I'm more than happy to consolidate if the schedule allows. I'm also going to be out of town for a week and a half before that one, the 26th. So personally, it works well for me. So before we get to that, I just want to take a moment and see if anybody from either the board or the public has additional questions or comments related to the MBTA housing. Mr. Whelan, we'll go ahead and unmute you, and
Yeah.
if you want to just again
Yes.
state your name and your address to start.
Sure. Eric Whelan to 13 Forest Lane. I have a question about the MBTA and the, I guess, so the selection of, or the planning board trying to find an area that's suitable for possible multi-unit housing. What about the state property? The state owns land on both sides of 85, up and down. And I don't understand, why wouldn't the state just use their own land?
If you're referring to the state park, that's
The state park is directly across from us, but but that state park land continues up 85 on both sides.
Yeah, I realize that. That's still part of the state park, and that's going to be under a conservation restriction. So it's intentionally protected to not enable development. And I also think it's worth noting too, and we talked quite a bit about this, but I think as a board, we're trying to strike that balance between complying and aligning with the intent of the bylaw while also trying to minimize the short-term disruption or build out and increase in population to our schools. So I think just ask that we continue to keep that in mind, that we're not looking to go necessarily find parcels of land that are easily developable. We're trying to balance that the intent of the bylaw or the intent of the state policy, along with managing or doing what's best for the town itself. I mean, state land is under conservation restriction. There's no option. And I also, the state isn't interested in subsidizing or building land. They're interested in changing some zoning that would, potentially at some point in the future, enable something that's in line with their wishes to be built.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question. I've mentioned before that we're very concerned here at the preserve, and I understand that nothing would happen unless we decided it would happen. I understand that. My concern is I don't know what Beacon Hill could decide 2 years, 4 years, or 5 years down the road if they decide to rewrite the laws, and that's a concern of mine, and nobody can predict that.
You're right, but the same thing could happen whether this is under MBTA housing or not. I'd still say it's highly unlikely either way, but whether or not the town does this doesn't change that likelihood of occurring.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Then on that note, everyone's okay with continuing to March 4th? Just looking for nodding heads before we'll formalize that. All right, I'll entertain a motion to continue the MBTA housing bylaw hearing to March 4th, 2024.
So moved, Ron Prefer.
Second.
Second.
All right, assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. Okay, stormwater regulations. John, do you want to give us an update as to where we stand on these? Did you get any? Were you were you able to get any additional feedback?
Yeah, so we got the draft regulations from Ty and Bond, and they are up on your screen now. So as I may have mentioned in the past, we originally reached out to Ty and Bond, who is serving as the DPW's consultant for various things, and asked them. We had a little budget set aside for the stormwater regulations, and asked them to review for precipitation calculations and update those as much as possible to be relatively aggressive to address the expanding impacts of climate change on rainfall calculations. And through our conversations, we found out that DPW is also having them review the stormwater regulations to make changes for MS4 permitting requirements so that our stormwater regs are in line with the state's requirements for MS4 permit, which many of you know the state is under, or the town is under. So MS4 is municipal stormwater sewer system something. There are 4 S's, so MS4 is why it's called that. And some of these are small changes, big changes, but I would recommend you read through them because they are pretty comprehensive. Probably a little too comprehensive to just go through right now and as I present them. And all of the changes here are really relating to the MS4 permit, and I'll get down to appendix. I forget what appendix it is, where we get into the rainfall calculations.
So John, just to clarify though, so
Yep.
Some of these changes are related to rainfall and some are related more to other procedural elements. Is that?
Yeah, so we specifically wanted them to look at the rainfall calculation to use. So there's certain sets of numbers that developers can use to anticipate the rainfall within a 24-hour period. And we were just trying to get some aggressive, or more aggressive, I should say, not necessarily aggressive, but more aggressive rainfall calcs so that when developers put in the stormwater management systems on projects that the planning board reviews under site plan review or special permits, they're not undersized as soon as they go in, because we were using outdated calculations, which were kind of the standard. And now we're updating them to more current numbers, which we still feel are outdated, but there's only so much we can actually do with the science that's out there. And it's also important to note that Mass DEP is updating their stormwater handbook, which a lot of towns basically tie to their stormwater regulations, which we do as well, that say you need to use these stormwater calculations or stormwater rainfall information, or Mass DEP stormwater handbook, whichever is more stringent. So right now, how we have it drafted, we are in line with Mass DEP, but they could always update it, and then ours would remain updated because it would follow theirs. Or we could update more aggressively than theirs, and then that would be the more restrictive version. So a lot of these changes are just clearing up what we need to do to be compliant with MS4, which we figured would be beneficial to, 2 birds with 1 stone, these stormwater regs, instead of having 2 separate hearings, since the planning board is the only entity that can approve these. So I would recommend you read through all of these. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments. I would imagine a lot of them are probably understandable, just clarifying, updating, changing the definitions so that, as we're in right now, so you can see it's probably consistent with the state requirements rather than just what we say for definitions. And then, where are we?
So John, question for you, just a
Yep.
procedural question.
Yep.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering, we have two pathways forward here. One, to your point, we can go back and read this on our own and come back with any open items or any unanswered questions. Two, I'm just curious to get people's thoughts. I guess it's 43 pages. And the blue is added text.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and do that. I was debating if it was just the red lines, then I was contemplating maybe we just try to go through that live to move this on. But I think with all of the new content being in blue, it's probably worth everyone taking a little bit of time to go through it.
So 2 points, if I may make them. This section A is really the crux of what we were trying to do. This is updating the rainfall calcs. So this is really, and some smaller things that play off of what this changes to make sure that everything is consistent. So all the rest of it is really MS4, and there might be other changes throughout the regs that deal with the rainfall calculations and updates and stuff, but this is really what we were looking for. The second point is we have Ty and Bond on contract. If the board would like them to attend the next meeting, I asked them not to attend this meeting because I figured the board would want to at least have a chance to look at it, review it, get some questions in their heads that you can send to me, or we can ask at the next meeting, and then we can have Ty and Bond attend the meeting and answer any other further questions if the board has them.
So I'm going to suggest this, and folks, planning board members, tell me if you're okay with this. I do want to wrap this up at our next meeting, if possible. What I'm suggesting is that if we all provide our comments or questions back to John a week before our next meeting, then we can make the call as to whether we'd like Ty and Bond to attend. And I guess my thinking is that way, rather than schedule them now to attend, let's see what kind of questions we come back with, and if there are specific details that people are looking to understand, for example, why are we using the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Atlas 14 instead of something else? Those are questions that they're going to be able to answer that realistically, I'm guessing probably John or myself would be able to. And I also just want to encourage, I want to encourage people to go through this sooner rather than later. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, it does.
Through the chair, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since I've been on the board, I don't remember us as a board looking into stormwater regulation. So I'm curious if there's any type of revision tracking on this to know, like the standard or the bylaws that exist today, were they done by a consultant as well, or no, I don't think I'll speak for myself, but I'm not an expert on stormwater management, and so I can read it as with my ability and my knowledge as a planning board member. But what exists today has been around for a long time. So I'm just curious how long it's been around, if we know. Did a consultant do it originally? How did we come up with what we have today? Just curious of the history. Oh, well, we can see adopted in 2008, amended 2014, and again in 2021.
Yeah, I don't probably have to go back and go into the detailed reviews for the actual changes made. The only one I would have been a part of would be 2021. I think Rob, you would have been involved with that one as well.
Yeah,
I I don't remember what it was.
I don't either. It had to be much more minor than what we're looking at now. All right, I will, I guess, hold my question and see, maybe touch base with John offline and see if there's any history that could be dug up of like how we came to where we are now. But
So I'm through the chair. I might be able to answer that generally.
Okay.
So I don't know what happened in 2008. I would reason to guess that a consultant was brought on back then to draft these, and they just get changed as needed. You know, only this will be the fourth time that they've been amended, and just to address situations at that point in time. In 2021, I believe we did make some additional changes related to MS4 compliance, and I would assume that that compliance requirement has changed even further. In 2021, I'm almost positive town council was the one that oversaw the revisions to that. And then I believe chapter 172 of the general bylaws, which put these into effect. So I can bring up the 2021 version if you'd like. I'm sure I have it in my file and I can find it.
no, I think for the purpose, for my benefit, it's basically to look at everything in blue and red that's been edited or modified, and if I have any questions or comments, be ready for them for the next meeting.
Yep. And my only add is that let John know whether those questions are to a point where you think it'd be worth having an expert on the line, on the call.
All right.
Because if they're just kind of simple, minor things, then I'm not going to burden them and pay for their time. But if anyone has broader questions about why or how or what figures were calculated or whatnot, then by all means, we'll have them on.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And John, just one other question. Once, assuming or hypothetically, if we do approve these changes, when do they go into effect?
So that's a great question. I'd have to check because I don't know if they're different than zoning, which means that they'd be in effect essentially when the hearing is posted or when they are adopted.
Okay.
So it's going to be either one of the two.
Okay. And I mean, either way, we're not in a position to approve them tonight. I was just thinking of the next public hearing and whether or not they would apply to the stormwater plan over on Elmwood Farms.
So I will say for the next hearing, the rainfall calculations, they have said that they are going to use, because we've been telling developers for several months now that this is our plan and to encourage them to use the NOAA 14 numbers. So they have said that they were using them, we're going to use those, so we can confirm that. I don't know how their application would differ versus based on the MS4 requirements, but in terms of the rainfall calcs, I believe that they would be consistent with this.
Okay, great, thank you. That's nice to hear. Any other questions or comments or questions and comments from the public? Or questions and comments from other board members?
No.
All right, so then if we continue on the theme of when we anticipate our next meeting, we would push this to March 4th. And that would mean that my ask for everyone would be to have their comments or questions into John by, is February 26th reasonable, John? Or should we, do you think, would you prefer it to be earlier than that?
I think that would be fine.
Okay.
I would not be opposed to people sending it earlier, but I think at least February 26th would be fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to March 4th, 2024.
So
So
moved.
moved, Ron Prefer.
Second.
All right, assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. Okay. On to our final public hearing, and this one is a new one. So I will entertain a motion to open public hearing for Elmwood Farms 3 off of Blueberry Lane for their stormwater management permit.
So moved. Second, Rob.
Thank you, guys. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
You hear me?
We can now.
Yeah, I was booted off back on, so, well, so I apologize. What's the motion?
Just opening the hearing.
Can you?
You want to abstain? Or you want to vote yes? I think they just
He
need it.
froze.
Okay, Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes, and that's a majority, so we'll move forward without Ron's vote. Okay, so Elmwood Farms, this is for those of you, actually, John, if you're okay, I'm going to have you start with an overview here, just given the history of this subdivision, because it's not one that the board has seen aside from an A&R for many years. So do you want to just give us the quick overview of this project, and then we'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicant. Is that okay with you?
With me? That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. All right. So Elmwood Farms, sorry, is a subdivision that was approved in the late 80s. It consisted of Blueberry Lane and the roads around there. But a portion of it wasn't constructed when it was approved. So in Massachusetts, when subdivisions are approved and substantially constructed, they are essentially approved forever, right? The board cannot take that approval back. They can construct the remaining homes at any point in time, and the requirements for what they are constructing are locked in at what they were when they were approved. So they would be beholden to the subdivision regulations in place in the late 80s and various other regulations that would be in place. So what happened with this one is the developer constructed most of the subdivision, left what are the roads? Fitch, Myrtle, and Adams Street unconstructed, and the houses around there unconstructed. And recently has gotten Toll Brothers to agree to purchase it and construct the remaining homes and roads. Toll Brothers has done their due diligence leading up to this, talked to Concom, talked to us, and found that the wetlands have changed on the site, which necessitated a change to the, not necessarily the layout, but they are not going to construct 4 of the homes, and they're not going to construct Adams Street, I believe. And so those have been through an A&R process, essentially merged into one lot, or 2 lots, I believe, and will be, I believe, reserved for open space or put a CRB placed on them and not developed. However, the rest of the site will be developed in accordance with the approved subdivision. So the rule is if they build it as it was approved, they don't need any further approvals. If they change how it was built or how it was approved, they would need to get an amendment, and then they would be subject to the current requirements at the time of the new approval. So they're going to construct it as it was previously approved. But they have agreed to update the stormwater to be compliant with our current stormwater regulations, given the existing stormwater issues in that area. And so they are going to construct the remaining part of the subdivision in a way that should comply with our stormwater regulations, not create additional issues with stormwater, and hopefully, if possible, mitigate existing stormwater conditions on site. But I don't want to sell that, and I'll leave that to Toll Brothers and Bowler to discuss. But that's pretty much where we're at on this. That pretty clear? Does anybody need any additional clarification or any questions?
No, thank you, John. And I appreciate it. I know we're going a little out of order, but I just wanted to, especially for members of the public or folks that are new to the board, just help them understand why we are looking at stormwater for a subdivision plan that none of us have seen in our time on the board. So appreciate the explanation and background. So for this hearing, we do have a public hearing outline that's in the meeting packet, and it's ready to discuss. Given this is still relatively new, my goal tonight is to get through the introduction, any preliminary staff report or consultant report, and then we'll go and discuss a potential site walk, which I think is worthwhile to do here, but and I'm not sure we're going to get much further than that tonight, just as we wait for the peer review report. But so let me go ahead and I'll turn it over to the Toll Brothers folks. And Ted, is that you that's going to be speaking to it?
Yes, I'll start.
Okay. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself, and if you want to give us an overview of what's before us, anything additional to what John already provided, that'd be great.
You got it. I appreciate it. I am Ted Merchant. I'm the Land Development Director with Toll Brothers. And John, I appreciate the intro into this. A lot of that was what I was going to say, but I'm glad you said it better than I could. Just wanted to, again, reiterate why we're in front of you today. Forgive my son for yelling in the background. Sorry, guys.
We've all been
again, this is an approved subdivision. We came before town staff a few months ago when we looked to purchase the site. You know, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble here. And Matt, if you could introduce, I need to wrangle a child.
Been there.
No problem.
Hey, Matt.
So we Toll Brothers, I'm sorry, Matt Ashley with Bowler. I'm the civil site engineer for the applicant Toll Brothers. So Toll Brothers came in front of the town to reintroduce the project and gather, feedback relative to the development and what we wanted to move forward with. Additionally, with meeting with the planning office and the various departments, we went through with conservation and with the wetlands that were out there and permitted those lots that were within those jurisdictions. And then gathering all the feedback from those various departments, put together the plan set that you see in front of you, which incorporates the feedback, all the Conservation Commission permits that we obtained, and the stormwater updates. I don't know, Ted, if you want to add to that, or I can kind of talk about those updates.
No, I guess just one of the things I wanted to point out, Matt, was that as John noted, this is an approved subdivision that we were able to build as is. And town staff recommended that we update the stormwater within the subdivision to better the rest of the community. We felt that was a good idea, both for us and the rest of the community. So while not necessary to come in front of you, we thought it was better for the project. So I'll let Matt go through the details of the application itself.
Can I ask really quickly before you get into that? Would you mind if one of you, or maybe if John can share his screen, just show us the lot layout and the streets and the the development plans. I just want to make sure everyone knows where and what we're talking about here.
I have that handy if you want to pull that up, John, or if you want to.
Thanks, Matt. That'd be great.
Sorry, we're a Teams company, not a Zoom company. Here we go.
All right, we can see it.
There we go. All good?
Yes.
So as Ted mentioned and John, I can give you a little overview here. So this is the existing Blueberry Lane here, with all of this already being developed. And then Fitch Ave and Myrtle Ave is what Toll Brothers is going to develop. And then there was another street in here, Adam Street, which kind of ran through here, kind of in the wetland. So obviously that didn't work. So that was consolidated into one big lot here, and then a portion of it did go to lot 54 or 47. I think it was 47. Yeah, here's the curvature of the road. And then, the house was updated appropriately on there.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to go ahead and walk us through the stormwater plans that you've submitted?
Absolutely. So I'm going to pull up an exhibit, which isn't exactly what was submitted, but still the same general intent. This just kind of shows the former Adams Street that was here. So the only real difference is this house slid over and this street no longer exists here, and those lots were combined. So as John and Ted said, meeting with the town early on and getting feedback on the development. Obviously, stormwater was a huge proponent here. And I think one of the first things John said to us is, can you use NOAA 14 rainfall numbers when we walked in the door? And we said, yep, we can absolutely do that. So all of the stormwater improvements that we're proposing here, we're all based off of that NOAA 14 rainfall data. So generally, above Cornell and NRCS is probably the other ones that you've heard thrown around for kind of the accepted rainfall data. So that's where we started when we went and did a stormwater analysis for the site. So in part of the previous improvement here, you kind of see this magenta or pink line, depending on what your computer says, but this was the stormwater main here. So essentially is going to collect most of the runoff that comes down throughout the development and the existing conditions. So we wanted to make sure that the main infrastructure that was going to collect rainfall data or rainfall runoff was appropriately sized to collect that. So we reviewed this and ended up upsizing most of the stormwater main to carry a larger volume through the site and out down to the existing stormwater basins, which you can see down in green here. The second thing that we looked at or added to the development was adding a drainage swale behind all the units here. As John mentioned, that main concern of the site was stormwater runoff just in the area. So topography wise, from Plan North to Plan South, stormwater kind of runs down all the way to Blueberry Lane. So the introduction of this swale here is going to collect runoff coming down the hill, go into a underground stormwater network, ultimately into the stormwater main in pink here, and then out to the stormwater basins, not changing where water's going today, ultimately, just providing a better route for it than what's in the existing condition. In addition to that, we introduced or improved upon many of the BMPs for the stormwater system out here. A part of the NOI process for the overall site and individual sites, there was the introduction of water quality units, sediment forebays, outlet control structures, and deep sump hooded catch basins to collect sediment right up front. Additionally, kind of already proposed here, but we kind of improved upon as well, is a French drain system. So anything that makes it, further down here, the purpose of this is to collect that surface or groundwater runoff, be collected and go to the existing stormwater basins. And then lastly, or not lastly, but also introduced additional infiltration chambers behind the house. So you can kind of see these blue little rectangles here. So under the previous approved plan, there was already some infiltration chambers, but with this development, we essentially doubled the amount of infiltration chambers on all of the houses, which is collecting runoff from the roof and going right into those infiltration chambers for each individual lot. So all of that, with all those improvements, we updated the stormwater modeling, modeled all the existing basins, and everything was calculated to reduce peak rate runoffs to these basins with all those improvements in the updated rainfall data. So that was a high overview of kind of the stormwater improvements that we're making here. But I'm happy to talk through any questions, or if Ted, you have anything else to add.
Okay, let's hold off on questions for just another minute or two. John, do you have anything additional from a staff report perspective?
So there are some comments from DPW, and there are more that we received recently that I will add to the file that have been sent to the applicants, so they're aware of them. The new ones, I believe, were sent directly to Ted, but I'd have to check. So those are certainly something that I would recommend the planning board review and think about. I don't personally have any comments aside from the ones that DPW has submitted. I think those are pretty comprehensive, and they will be the ones taking over the roads should they become public. So I think they seem to know what they're talking about in this regard. Department of Health had a couple questions as well. So I would recommend the board look at those. But as the applicant laid out, this is something that is intended to improve the stormwater over what was approved in the late 80s. And so really any infrastructure that's installed that complies with our current stormwater regulations will be a benefit from what would have been put in otherwise.
Yeah, and I think just on that point, if you look at the drawing that Matt has up on the screen right now, all that water to the north is currently running down through the property down to Blueberry Lane now. So we're cautiously hopeful that by installing this much more comprehensive stormwater management system, that it'll collect a good portion of that water and route it to the appropriate through the appropriate stormwater system, as opposed to moving across and down those parcels. So that's the hope. I will say, just from a process perspective, as Rob mentioned previously in the previous discussion, we are not stormwater experts, but that is where we have a engineer that is a representative of the town that will be reviewing all this, and those questions from DPW and any others will be submitted. My personal opinion is I think if people have questions, we can certainly ask them now, but my instinct is always to wait for the town representative engineer to go through their report, and then we can ask questions from there. But before we get there, Ronnie, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, through the chair, very briefly, I just want to confirm two things. Firstly, what is being proposed is merely to update the stormwater regulations that are rather archaic, we'll say, and therefore then this thing allowing now the initiation of the purchase of the 20 lots for construction. Is that a true statement?
I can't comment on the allowing them to purchase it, because they could purchase it either way. And I do think it's worth noting that the applicant is doing this on not because they're required to, because to your point, technically speaking, the stormwater standards that were approved back in the 80s still hold today. So they're doing this. John's going to correct me on that. John, why don't you correct me on that before
I'm not going to correct you.
say any
I just
further.
want to, I like working with some of the developers, and these developers are very good, communicating with us. But I will say they're not doing this out of the goodness of their own heart. DPW has said they will recommend not accepting the road if the stormwater is not improved. So there is a little component of benefit to the developer at some point in time.
Okay.
But is there a connection with, because it says directly in the packet that they will then has purchased the remaining 20 lots. So has that process already begun, or are they're not contingent one upon the other?
I can answer that. We are going to close on the 20 lots tomorrow, regardless of whether this permit goes through.
Okay, and so this is again, this is a question historically, this is for John, apologize. Now, is this considered, therefore, an expansion of an existing development or a new development which requires going through the planning board?
So this is neither, oh, sorry, Gary.
Go ahead, John.
This is neither an extension or an amendment. This is they're constructing previously approved but unbuilt homes. So this part of the subdivision was approved back in the late 80s when the entire subdivision was approved, and the developer just never built it, never built this portion of it. So they are building this portion, which is why they don't have to get any further approvals related to the subdivision because it's already been approved.
Wonderful, because I was just curious with the affordable housing, the numbers, that does not apply here. It's just stormwater. Thank you very much. That's all I need to know. Appreciate it.
Okay. We'll get to more questions and comments in a moment here, but as I mentioned, we will have our peer review engineering staff, engineering consultant, I guess I should say, review this. We do not have that report yet. John, do you have any update on when we might expect that?
We hope in about a week. We just got the check at the end of last week, so that's our trigger to tell them that they can get started with the review. So we only told them at the end of last week they can get started. So,
okay. And to the applicant, we do have a preference that you work with our peer review engineers as much as possible. Our goal is really to resolve majority of the outstanding issues even before it gets to us. And then if there are things that there's either a disagreement or that we need to weigh in on, then we can do that. But it's a much faster process for you to work with them and make adjustments as needed than it is for every single change to come before us. So we'll still review the changes, but the more aligned you are with our peer review firm, the better. Oh, go ahead. All right. From a sidewalk perspective,
I was just saying,
if I had to guess what Ted was going to say is that we like working right with peer review consultants as well, and then everything just goes smoother during the hearings here, but no problem doing that. And then we'll keep you updated on that coordination as well.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I do think a site walk is warranted here, and I number one, just because even though we're not reviewing the houses back there, this is a good sized subdivision, and I know how big of an issue stormwater and water issues have been in the past. We typically do site walks on Saturday mornings. Hey, bud, how are you? So we typically do site walks on Saturday mornings. And I guess we would generally ask for the applicant to be there to show us around, or a representative of the applicant. Do you guys have a preferred Saturday morning to do this on?
Is it just the next couple Saturdays? Should we just send you over a couple dates that work, or?
Is it our preference would be to establish it now, and those sidewalks are also open to the public. And I know there's a number of people from the public from the neighborhood that are on this call. So ideally, I'd love to set it now. But if you need a little bit of time, or even to chat back and forth, we could give you a few minutes as well.
This coming Saturday would work if that works for you guys.
That probably is going to make sense because I think the next Saturday is a holiday weekend. Unfortunately, this Saturday could be tricky for me, but I also don't need to be there. But members of the board, how does this Saturday work?
The 10th works for me.
Works for me.
I could do it, yeah.
Okay. All right. And time, do people have a preference? 8 a.m., 9 a.m.?
9 works for me.
I could do
No,
8 a.m.
9:30, any of those times are good.
8 a.m. is great.
Not a chance, Matt.
All right, so I'm hearing more in favor of 9 a.m. than 8 a.m.
8:30. Split the difference.
I'll split the difference. I'll split the difference for you, Matt.
8:30.
9 a.m.
Does
Okay.
8:30 work, or are we locked in on 9?
I'll do either.
I most likely can't do either, so I'm let's I know there were some firm 9s, so if no one objects, we'll plan for 9 a.m. on Saturday, February 10th.
So, to the chair, even I can't make this Saturday. I got a conflict, so if it's okay, then rest of all is can go ahead for the work.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Vic.
Could an address be sent to so we know where to meet?
Yes, good question. Matt or Ted, where should people park? I know there's a couple of entry points back there. I would also recommend people bring shoes that they're willing, shoes or boots that they can get muddy because it is wet.
Yeah, so there's a couple. So I'll share my screen again real quick. Still have permission here. So the two proposed roads, Myrtle and Fitch Ave, kind of right here, and then there's the 2 existing stormwater basins that you'll drive by. So probably right around these 2 points here, maybe over here. We can start over here and work our way around that way, if it makes sense with everyone.
Okay, so starting on the
Yeah,
easternmost side, and that would be near 29 Blueberry.
29 and 31 Blueberry. Yep.
The Olsons will be thrilled that we're going to be parking in front of their house.
I can swap it to the other side if that's better.
No, well, to be honest, people can park anywhere in there because they're all going to have to walk back to where they started from. So,
Not
guess,
that long of a walk.
no, it's not. Good point, Jane. Okay, so February 10th, 9 a.m. And at this point, I'll open it up. Let's start with the planning board and see if there's any questions or comments, and then we'll go ahead and open it up to the public to see if they have any questions or comments. Members of the board? If I'm not seeing any, then members of the public, if you have a comment, if you want to ask a question, you can just come off mute, or you can come off if you either come off mute or turn your camera on. And then just as a reminder, we ask that you start with your name and address. So I see Miss Lombardi.
I'm Caitlin Lombardi. I'm at 14 Blueberry Lane. So we're at the end of proposed Myrtle. 2 questions. One is, are there any proposed improvements to the existing Blueberry drainage system that will be intaking the water flowing down from these properties? And 2, are the current estimates taking into account the fact that the new Elmwood School was approved, which is kind of right to the left of this property? presumably a lot of clearage of land, parking lots, et cetera, which will impact the water flowing from that site as well. So those are my two questions.
Those are both great questions. Ted or Matt? You want to respond?
Sure. As far as infrastructure for Blueberry, the existing stormwater basins are getting some improvements relative to water quality treatment and the other control structures inside of them. Nothing specifically in Blueberry Lane itself, just where it connects into Blueberry. And then our stormwater analysis incorporates anything that's coming down onto the site. So we looked at a broader picture, not just where we're developing, but I don't believe we went all the way up to where the school, but we did look at all the runoff coming down from that hill where the new school is.
All right, so I heard there that you went beyond the property, but maybe not the entire Elmwood School property. Can you just clarify how far north your analysis went?
We looked at anything that was coming onto our site. So we didn't model all the way up around the whole property, but we did look at runoff coming onto the site and took that into account with our stormwater design.
Okay. And then I guess going back to the Blueberry Lane improvements, and I don't know the answer to this, but I know just from having run on Blueberry a lot over the past couple of months, there's often a lot of water on the street. I don't know if you've looked at that at all, but is that related at all to stormwater, or is that something that's not related to your design and plans?
So I guessing I can't say for sure, but any stormwater that's coming on to Blueberry Lane is definitely runoff coming down the hill. So our stormwater design is accounting for all that runoff going down to Blueberry, and we're intercepting it earlier with our design essentially. There should be a reduction on stuff making it to Blueberry.
All right, so maybe it's safe to say that if it is from runoff from the property, then it would be enhanced. If it's a function of drainage on the street itself, then you're not repaving Blueberry, so that it wouldn't be addressed in that situation. Okay, I see a bunch of people that came on camera here. If you want to either wave or you can use the raise your hand feature. Yes, John.
Just want to address one of those points before we move on to the next one. The Elmwood School, I'm assuming you're talking about the one that's just been approved for funding, but has not been designed. Yeah, so for that one, there's no design of the structure or of the site. So there's really no way to capture what they're going to do on the site because we don't know yet in terms of development. In addition to that, that project will also need to get a stormwater management permit and will also have to treat the stormwater on site. So theoretically, a lot of the stormwater that's coming from that site should remain on that site and then should not come down the hill.
Thanks, John. That's a good point. Appreciate that. Ms. Cooprider.
Hi, I'm Karen Cooprider at 5 Blueberry Lane, which is to the left of this site on that map that you showed. It's at the corner of Briarcliff. I had the same questions as Caitlin. So Caitlin, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm down to one question. You talked about the water that runs from top to bottom on that map, but I also, because I live on the Briarcliff side of things, know that it runs from right to left as well. And I'm curious if that's something that, I say that because the water runs to our property onto Briarcliff from the hillside and through our basement, which it never used to do until Marathon School was built. But having said all that, is that something that you guys have seen, that's part of the direction that the water flows? And if so, does your water capture system account for that direction of flow?
Matt?
Yep. So I think you're talking along the I'm going to say left-hand side of the development, the topo does come down, and then there definitely seems to be, from the topography of the survey, that water does run that way a little bit. So anything that is modeled to come onto our site, we are taking into account for our design. We obviously can't take account for stuff that's not even going to make it to our site, but if it is anticipated to make it onto our site, that's looked at in our model as well.
So in other words, if it's already water that's coming down on the existing properties, and it's moving from east to west, then that's not going to be addressed. Because it's not on your property, and you're not going to go in and design a new stormwater system on existing property. That's what I'm hearing, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we don't have control of that land.
Okay. Hannah, did you have a question or a comment? Or I should say, does anybody else from the public have a question or comment? Yes, Hannah, if you can unmute yourself and then just again start with your name and address.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kristen Borzamato. I live on Hemlock, and
sorry, can you give us your specific address?
3 Hemlock Drive.
Okay.
It definitely runs down our neighborhood too, like really badly. Like it's like a river, you know. And I'm just wondering, like, if this neighborhood goes in and the water gets way worse for everybody, like what happens then? Can anyone hold anyone accountable for that situation?
Yeah, it's a fair question. It's a tricky one to deal with. I'd say first and foremost, that's one of the reasons that we have our peer-reviewed engineering firm review this. And there are standards that need to be complied with, and then there's some interpretation, and that's why we have a peer review group review it. I'd say that where it gets tricky is that the way these systems are designed, and they're designed to our previous conversation, where we're increasing the amount of rainfall that they're designed to address. But that being said, there are, as we talk about 50-year storms, 100-year storms, no system is designed to address 100% of all potential storms. And there can be many factors as to why stormwater events may happen. With regards to repercussions or potential design changes or additional assessments and whatnot, John, I'm going to look to you to see if you have any guidance on what happens if a accepted and approved stormwater system is not meeting the objectives that it was intended to address.
So that's a really tough question to answer, because if it's reviewed and confirmed to comply with the regulations and the standards, we'd have to figure out why it's not working. And a lot of the times it might not be the design, it might be perception is that it's not working, even though the water might be the same amount. It can be perception that it looks worse than it actually is, or it may be coming from a different source that the project has not impacted. We're dealing with that a lot on some of the projects along Main Street. So there's really no good answer as to how we can rectify that, because we'd have to do some research as to figure out what the source actually is, which might consist of a whole slew of techniques to identify where the water's coming from. So it would really depend on the situation itself, and looking into the system, confirming that everything was constructed as approved, everything was done to the regulations, and then moving from that and figuring out a different potential source for the water.
All right, thanks, John. And again, I think we've all probably dealt with this. I've lived in my house for 17 years. This winter is the only time in 17 years that my sump pump has run consistently. And so I just point that out as an example that there's been no development around me or near me, but sometimes there are things that change that are hard to predict. I think to me the takeaway is that this is our opportunity to be as confident as we can that the system that's installed improves the situation. And and again, I think the way this process is set up. I mean, I struggle with like I said, I'm cautiously hopeful that you just look at the drawings and the topography and the ability to move water underground via pipes instead of over the ground. I genuinely hope that there is a substantial improvement from what's there today. So, Parker.
Through the chair. Well, Matt, I was curious, based on your assessment, what are the cost implications of updating the stormwater system to comply with the Atlas 14 standards versus if you were going to look backwards to the regulations when they were in 1980? I was just curious about that. And Gary, I did install a sump pump, so this because of the water we had this year. So I'm, frankly, looking at the drawings and quite impressed with how elegant the solution is and knowing the cost of what could be. But I was curious, Matt, kind of what the differing costs would be based on your assessment and expertise if you guys had undertook that analysis.
Matt?
Is that me, Matt, or board?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's you.
So I can't speak to the costs of the two different ones. I'm not sure. We didn't review that as part of our stormwater analysis.
Okay. Parker, it's a good question though. And I think point is noted. Ms. Matza.
Hi, my name's Sherry Matza. I'm actually at 17 Blueberry, and where that French drain is going in, I'm just curious of what the clearing of the trees is over there, as well as from a construction standpoint. How is that going to be, I don't know, noise pollution? How long is that going to go on for? And is that really going to help a majority of the water that's already behind our house? We already have a French drain behind our house that didn't work. So I was just curious with all the shift and stuff with the water and what has happened in the past for us that are in the middle of Blueberry. I know that there's issues with water as it is. So I didn't know putting that French drain cutting across, if that will really help. And if you're taking away trees, what's going to happen? Where's the water going to go? You know what I mean?
I can speak to that briefly.
Okay.
I guess number one, the French drain that is shown there has already been approved by the Conservation Commission. So it's a requirement that we put it in already. I think what Matt's showing on his plans is a slightly upgraded version of that.
Okay.
In terms of cutting down trees, I mean, we need to make a path wide enough for an excavator to get down. So 10 feet wide, 15 feet wide, I'm guessing, but something along those lines. And in terms of time that it would take for that run of French drain, and I'm making this up, but it's 2 weeks or less probably, not including the clearing part of it, that just the physical installation.
So can I ask another question then? So once you clear the trees, put the French drain in, do you actually put new trees back in, or it's just left?
No, because there can't be vegetation growing on top of the pipe.
Not even, okay.
So yeah, the pipe needs to be maintainable and therefore nothing can be growing on top of it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. I think Mr. Anderson had his hand up.
Yes, hi, this is Todd Anderson, 16 Blueberry Lane. I just had a question because from the very start of the explanation of how this all came about, 1980 something was the approval of these houses. Is that something, I mean, if I got approved for a bank loan in 1980, I don't think I could cash in on it. So is there a plan, or is there any kind of future proofing around installments like this? I mean, it just seems like they could sneak up on people if we plan for housing, and then there's a subcommittee or a subdivision that's been planned for years and years, and it's active, and there's 2 schools that go in, and all of a sudden there's no more woodland between schools and houses. It's probably a question for maybe outside this group, but I'm just curious to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah, this one definitely is a little tricky, and that's one of the reasons I asked John to open it up. And I will say that generally speaking, we do have language in our subdivision approvals that if construction isn't started in a certain amount of time, that approval can expire or they need to resubmit. But in the case of once it's started in a meaningful way, the laws are written in a way that they are entitled to continue. And that's, I think, trying to acknowledge that economic factors can change, that there's a lot of different things that could happen, and the intent is to not have to repeat work. I don't, is that the right thing or not? We could probably debate that. But I will say that I know, John can comment on who has weighed in on it. I know several years ago when this started, we had some conversations about what needed to come before us. John, do you have anything else to add on sort of Mr. Anderson's question?
Yeah, so it's a state law that we have to abide by. It's not a local regulation. It's something that's in the Subdivision Control Act, that once the subdivision is approved and substantially constructed, it's essentially approved in perpetuity. Like Gary said, once something is approved but not constructed, there's I think a 7-year grace period where it can be constructed, but once that 7-year period ends, it can get retracted. Not the case in this situation, since it was substantially constructed. So if you wanted to change it, we'd have to change it at the state level.
Yeah. Oh, and I did want to say that I feel like the committee here and the town of South has obviously provided input, and it seems like, I don't know anything about drainage, but it seems pretty hardy and pretty well built, or well planned out. So I do appreciate that. I just wanted to hear some thoughts. So thank you.
All right. Mr. Olson.
Thanks. Eric Olson, 29 Blueberry Lane. I'll be there for the site visit on Saturday, so no worries parking here. But the question I had, it seems like a lot of construction around town in the midst of the construction has had a lot of stormwater runoff issues. I see it routinely in the paper and the headlines. Do we have anything particular that we're trying to do proactively here to address the construction water issues that seem to be so prevalent everywhere else in town?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's, to your point, it's something we've struggled with. And there will be a number of conditions in this that the applicant needs to conform to. I also will note that, that depends on the type of violation, but there is an option to enforce fines as well. So, once it's built out, if it doesn't work, then it's a little more difficult to do much about it. But at least while it's under construction, if there are violations of those requirements, then there is an ability to levy fines, which helps drive some enforcement. Matt or Ted, I don't know do you want to comment really quickly on the types of things you do during construction to manage this? Because I think we all know that once that land is disturbed, and particularly if it's cleared in one shot, that there's there could be a pretty significant impact from water management.
So I can say that as part of our site development plan set, we do come up with a full erosion and sediment control plan. That's part of the peer review that the peer review will be looking at as well. And then we also do prepare a SWIP, or a stormwater pollution prevention plan for the site to look at that and try to address all that concerns during construction. So it is something that we're looking at already.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Ms. Farrell.
Hi, I'm Melissa Farrell on 31 Blueberry Lane, so we'll be a direct abutter to Fitch Ave. I have a few questions, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Before this development was sold to Toll Brothers, the previous developers had agreed to put in a French drain system around our property because we receive a lot of the water that comes down from like the part of EMC field where they just actually built a whole drain system. I don't know if that was written into these new stormwater systems.
Matt?
Yep. So yes, that's the first thing that Toll Brothers has to do before they start any other construction, is install that French drain system.
So it is, you guys have copied it over from the previous owners of the land to add that in? Okay.
Yep.
I have another question too. So where Fitch Ave would intersect with Blueberry right now, there is a major water issue where the water just kind of pools there on the street. And at this time of the year, it's often like a 15-foot by 8-foot patch of ice. Is there going to be systems in place there to rectify that, either like during construction or before it begins? Because I imagine that's going to worsen significantly.
Matt?
I feel like I'm that kid that always get called on in class here. I'm not aware of anything right there, but we can certainly take a look at that when we're out there on Saturday, and we can take a look at it and your concerns and see what we can do for there.
So Matt, question: if it's where the street comes in and ties into Blueberry, then I'm assuming that would be in purview of this project. Is that a fair assumption? I mean, I realize you're going to want to see where the water's pooling, but if it is in fact at that intersection, then it seems like it's something that you guys would address.
Yeah, we certainly don't want a big pool of water on the new development area. So we'll take a look at it and we'll see what we can do.
Great. Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just learned this, but I know you guys said that you're not allowed to plant over French drains, right? Because you don't want the vegetation over the drainage system. So were they just cleared all of the land directly behind our home for the EMC stormwater management system? We've actually lost a ton of trees there. Obviously hoping that the stormwater system will rectify the water issues, but I think they took down way more trees than we were expecting, at least myself and the other abutters. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, with all these French drains, knowing you can't plant trees over them, like what's the offset there?
Matt?
Sorry, I just couldn't get to the unmute button. I don't know if I can speak directly to the offset of trees to the French drains, but I think the French drains will certainly be an improvement, and that was the recommendation of the boards and the peer reviewers prior to us, that they thought it was a better decision to put that in than to leave the vegetations with no French drains.
Melissa, I would say, and I'm sure that you're aware of this, but associated with that development, there's going to be a pretty substantial clearing well beyond, and just the nature of building these types of houses. So I just want to make sure that expectations are realistic, that the clearing is going to go way, 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 way beyond where the French drains are.
Yeah.
Did you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. All right, we'll go back to Ms. Cooprider.
Yeah, one other question. The same intersection that Melissa was talking about is also the location of a trail that goes from EMC to Blueberry Lane that was approved to be constructed at town meeting last year. And they started construction for about a day or two and then they stopped. But that's at the same location. So I'm curious how that ties into the project, or how that trail is going to be completed, or where it's going to be, or if that's still happening, and how that's affected by the project.
Yeah, I think I can take that one. And it's worth noting that the original trail actually goes to Fitch, not all the way to Blueberry. So that trail will actually tie in to the new street.
And so that won't be constructed till after the development is put in, or is it part of the development?
Good question. My preference is that it's actually installed before the development, because it's easier to get trails in before houses are built. But John, do you have any update on the construction timing for that trail, since that's actually the town that's going to be constructing it?
I don't. My understanding is that you said that construction has started. I am not aware of any plans for construction having been started. So maybe somebody was just doing some brief work for a day and then stopped.
Yeah, somebody did something and you can't walk on that trail anymore.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that was planned or proposed at this point. I think that was, so the two sidewalk, that's what I'm assuming we're talking about, the two sidewalk things at town meeting, one of them Chestnut, the other one EMC. Chestnut was the priority, so that's what DPW is currently working on designing. And then I believe they were going to work on EMC after, or once Chestnut has made some progress. But I'd have to talk to DPW and see where they're at with that, and facilities as well, and see what the plan is.
My guess is the construction is probably just from, either they were doing, they're doing some type of site assessment, something in there. I think it's fairly common that the developers will go into an excavator and drill some test pits and whatnot. So can't say for sure. Maybe if Matt or Ted could, but it's probably related to that as opposed to the trail itself.
Yeah, we did go in there with an excavator to do test pits on lots, just to, like you said, evaluate soil conditions. So I'm not sure if that's what you're thinking of, but we have done that.
Yeah, there used to be a really nice little kind of walk over the wet area, so that I think for a lot of the neighborhood kids, they would use the existing trail. But
a lot of the residents in the neighborhood and the kids would use the trail, and now we can't. And if that's the outlet for where the trail ends, that's also where Fitch Road ends. So I don't know how, if you put the trail in, it's going to have to be redone when they build the neighborhood.
Yeah,
but.
Well, the trail ties into Fitch, so and then it'll be on the street from there. So
okay.
Yeah. Mr. Olson.
Sorry, just getting my video back on just a second. Hi, Eric Olson, 29 Blueberry Lane. On that trail question, as just discussed, it's a vital link for residents of Blueberry, both kids and others, to get through there. I've seen other construction sites where they essentially put a gate across the entire construction site, i.e. they would gate Fitch Road and not allow any access between essentially Blueberry and EMC. Is there any plan by the developer to allow like a resident throughway, essentially either on the existing trail or on Fitch Ave to the new Hopkinton sidewalk once constructed, or will Fitch Ave be gated off with a chain link fence?
I can say that we do not intend to install a chain link fence or any other barrier to entering the property. I would say that particularly when under construction, we don't want residents or really anyone coming onto the site, for risk's sake. But once the road is constructed, but not yet turned over to the town, I don't think that that's an issue.
Yeah, no, it's more like recognizing the road will be done first, but the houses will take years. Can we use the road and the trail before that?
Under that circumstance, I think unofficially I can say that wouldn't be an issue.
Right, that would be huge.
So,
thank you.
Mr. Olson, I can comment, just having lived very near a Toll Brothers construction site for a number of years, and I've been walking that street for most of it. So to Ted's point, there was a point when the road was under construction where they were a little more careful. Just but generally speaking, it's a very open site. So it's actually been a nice place to walk.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. So appreciate everyone's engagement and discussion. I think as a board, we really encourage public participation. So I am grateful for folks speaking up and sharing their concerns and perspective. All of your participation helps make this a better site. And I fully acknowledge, I know that for all of the abutters, this is not something they want to see. But it's I don't know how else to describe it, but it's something that happens to all of us. And like I said, it's something that I've been through as well. And I think this is an opportunity for us to try to minimize or avoid any of the negative repercussions. So appreciate everyone's participation. So we have a site walk for Saturday. And I think at this point, if there's no other discussion, we can go ahead and continue. I'm going to recommend continuing to March 5th. Is that okay with you, Ted?
Through the chair, March 4th.
Oh, March 4th. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay. And I know we have one meeting prior, but it looks like we're hopefully going to be able to skip that one, and it's only a week before. So on that note, then I will entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to March 4th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Rob, yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. So thank you guys, and look forward to getting into the peer review, engineering review of that at our next meeting. And many of us will see you on Saturday.
Thank you.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. Last on our agenda is meeting minutes from January 22nd. And Lori, I just want to say great job with those. Not easy to step into, but appreciate your work on it.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments or proposed edits on those minutes?
No, terrific job.
Okay, so I will then entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from January 22nd, 2024.
So moved. Ron Fraser.
Second.
All right, so we no further discussion. Rob, how do you vote?
Rob, yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. Last but not least, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So we no further discussion. Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. We'll see you in almost a month. So, and don't forget to review those stormwater revisions and respond with any questions or comments to John within the next couple of weeks, at least a week before the meeting. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Thank you.